Outboard shield. Close all outboard shields.
Multiple hull breaches detected.
Keep an eye out for a man with a cell phone belt clip, cargo pants, a bullwhip yelling, "That's a big deal," yelling, "That's a big deal." He seems aggressive. Watch out.
Bring it back. Give it up for Tim Alberino.
Tim, a lot of weird stuff on the Death Star today.
I feel like we're about to have a board meeting.
Yeah, we are. Did you miss the board? Did you miss the game show? I think you missed.
I did.
Yeah.
I missed the telephone booth.
Yeah, you missed that. That was last.
Some people didn't get out of it last year.
I think it was Laura. She couldn't find her way out. It was. We were tired back.
Tim, we've done a lot of stuff together. We just put out a Book of Enoch together. You guys got that? Yeah. And we went to Peru right after last year's Blurry Con. So we've done a lot of fun stuff.
And we're going to Costa Rica.
That's right.
2025.
Right. There's a few more tickets to Costa Rica if anyone wants to join us. I think we have 3 or 4 left. And we have a very Star Wars themed talk today planned, supposedly.
That we do.
Yeah. Exploding planets and
Something like that. I don't remember. Oh, that's good. That'll be a good start to the show. Yeah. You just fill the time.
I need a cigar. Can we smoke cigars up here?
Oh, we are in church, Tim. Although a blurry church.
Yeah, it's true. We do have blurry cigars, though, right?
Oh, we do.
Yeah, we do.
We do. At the VIP event, we'll have some blurry.
Oh,
Yes.
he's in that.
All right.
So, Tim, where do you want to start with this conversation? It's always hard to get you started, but then once you get started and you go, it doesn't end.
It's like that Blazer that flew in here. It's still driving.
Where do you want to start with this conversation? Did you like how you got here?
I did.
Did you see? Yeah. I like that was your style. All right.
All right. Oh. All right. Well,
Big ups, huh?
yeah. Well, see you later.
I do want to say that, last year, some of you may be aware, I went on an expedition in the Amazon.
Yeah.
I investigated face peelers, and it was gentlemen from this church who helped me fund it. So let's hear it for Conduit Church.
Conduit Church. Yeah, that's right.
Pastor Darren Tyler and some of the guys from this church, helped me do that. So
Yeah, really cool people here. They've been incredibly generous to us. Basically, like I said, gave us the keys for like 4 days and make it happen. So without them, it wouldn't be here. But that's really cool. So they funded that expedition for you.
they co-funded it with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We were able to
give like food and stuff to the locals and
Yeah, we supplied that village. We brought them
let's go.
I got to get that installed in my house. Yeah, every time I walk through my house.
I wasn't a stormtrooper.
Yeah. He also knows the game show rules as well. So
John's a talented man. No, we're not talking about going to the jungle, Tim. We are.
aren't we always?
Welcome to the jungle. Yeah, we are talking about some topics we haven't talked about. We're talking about Rahab, Mars specifically, and some of your thoughts around.
Yeah, this is a topic I don't think we ever talked about on your show, is it? Rahab?
A little bit.
Okay.
We have a little bit.
Well,
I think you've teased it. But you just needed a Star Wars set to really
you
make it
do.
happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Tease it out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at this. This Rahab could have been right there. We don't know. No idea. Help me out here, Tim.
I decided I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Oh, that's great. All right.
I'll take the initiative.
I think we got this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to transition into anything serious when you after walking through blast doors of Star Wars music. And I think you guys had Yoda or something around here too earlier, right?
He's here, creeping around. He's always here. He's pretty mean. That's a mean Yoda.
Yeah. Scrumpy. Lonely.
Want me just to dive in?
Yes. Tim. Let's talk about how Yoda's lonely.
I don't know what's
100
her name.
years. I mean,
Where the heck am I?
I feel like he's like a lady in the Titanic. Just like, 87 years I've waited.
Well, if you've read my book, Birthright, then you know that I have a very different perception of the beginning of Genesis than a lot of people. You know, the conventional view is that the beginning of Genesis is the beginning of the universe. It's the beginning of the story, the narrative. And I have a different view. And in fact, I believe it is the correct biblical view, in that what we see in Genesis verse 2 specifically is a re-beginning on the earth in the aftermath of cataclysm. And that's where our story begins. But our story is not the first chapter in the book. Our story begins after the events of the previous episode.
Say movie 3.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh.
Good. That's good, Nate.
Star Wars? Nobody? Anyway.
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
So, and I have to, sort of preface this discussion of Rahab. And so there's, as we've talked about before, there's a couple of different ways to view the beginning of Genesis. And we don't have time to go into all the details, but the conventional view is that Genesis 1, as I said, and Genesis 2 is the very beginning, right? And we show up in the beginning. That's where our story begins. And Genesis 1 is in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth, and then the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And that seems like a full sentence, that is the initial formation of the earth, the initial formation of the universe, and then boom, we pop up on the scene after, on the sixth day of creation. But there's a very good case that can be made. I do it in Birthright, and I do it using material from George H. Pember, the 19th century scholar, who proposed that, in fact, there is a different rendering of verse 1 and 2 in Genesis. And I don't have time to go through all the details. That would take more than the time we have here. But just know that you could just as easily derive verse 1 and 2 in the following way. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So that's the initial creation. Full stop, period. But, and the but rendition of this verse is actually in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, but the earth became desolate and empty, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. That's a very different story. Right. That's a very different scene. It's not a continuous flow from verse 1 into verse 2, and this is the beginning of everything. Rather, what you have in this scenario is you have the universe coming into existence, and then you have something happening on earth that renders it desolate and empty. And I believe that something is cataclysm, and that the opening scene of Genesis is the earth in a state of ruination post-cataclysm. And so you ask yourself the question, what happened preceding this opening scene? What caused this scene? And I think the answer to that question, we're all very familiar with, would be there was a rebellion. There was a rebellion. Now, I know some people take the position that the rebellion of Satan, the fall of Satan, happened in the Garden of Eden, and that's when that whole thing initiated. I don't. I believe that there was a, dare I say, galactic rebellion.
Hey, what do you know?
In the pre-Adamic past, and it was an insurrection. And the insurrection was led by a renegade prince who was exceedingly prominent in the kingdom of heaven. Indeed, the highest being in created order under the King of heaven himself, the Son of God. And that he drew into this rebellion various other princes, specifically 6 other princes, a red dragon with 7 heads. And that this culminated, this conflict that ensued culminated in the obliteration of a planet. And I believe that planet is called Rahab in the Old Testament. And there's allusions to Rahab throughout the Old Testament, which we can get to some of those. And then, after this insurrection was incited, by this renegade prince, the dragon, which is one of his monikers in the Old Testament. He is vanquished. And the Bible actually, the Old Testament actually, there's a thread of this story that you can follow through the Old Testament. Those of you who've read Birthright will know that there's an epic story there, but it's cryptic. It's encrypted, and you have to extract the data like an encrypted folder. You have to decrypt it and extract the data. And when you do, you get intimations of this epic battle that took place in the cosmos before the creation of Adam, in which the King of Heaven, the right hand of God, vanquished his enemies and threw them down. And again, in the midst of this battle, an entire planet was obliterated. And that would be, today, the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. That's the thesis. And
You know, Luke, I got this 80s Zach Morris cell phone here, and it doesn't have a carrier. It doesn't have any wireless plan. What do I do? Alltel Mobile.
I think Alltel's gone, buddy.
Yeah.
I think Mint Mobile is the way you want to go.
Okay.
And what we found is Mint Mobile is the way to go, Nate. So summer's just around the corner.
Yeah.
And it's time to get skimpy on your cell phone bill and fatten your wallet.
That's right. So if you want to hook this baby up like Zach Morris, go to mintmobile.com. You can get high-speed data, your choice, unlimited talk, text, and web delivered on the nation's largest 5G network.
That's right. It's only $15 a month. Super easy to set up. Incredibly easy, in fact. And the service is fantastic. We have crisscrossed the country and not run into any trouble.
That's right. This wireless plan will make you jump. Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for only $15 a month. And get your summer savings and shop premium wireless now. Plans starting $15 a month. Mintmobile.com/blurry.
That's mintmobile.com/blurry. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 month, 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available, taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
so we show up on the scene in the aftermath of this conflict. And indeed, I think that we show up in the scene not only in the aftermath of this conflict, but as a consequence of this conflict.
Do you believe the world was here, or was the world created after that?
I believe that the beginning of Genesis, where we see the creation of the earth and the things that happened in those 6 days, that what we are seeing, in fact, is a reformation of the earth, a renewal of the earth in the aftermath of cataclysm. And again, if you trace this thread through the Old Testament, this story emerges. This epic tale emerges, and you begin to understand the gravity and consequence of the creation of the human species and this adversary that we're encountering in the scriptures. Because this isn't a new adversary. This is a very old adversary. And he was defeated on, let's call them, extraterrestrial battlefields in days past. And again, I'm not making this up, there's intimations of this in the Bible. And he will be ultimately vanquished once and for all at Armageddon at the end. Well, almost once and for all. But that all of everything that's happening now, we're moving in a particular direction, and all of this is going to culminate in a kinetic war at the end of the age. So I can go ahead.
I like this because we know there's an ancient battle, right? And frankly, the Bible is the story of man, right? It's our story, and we notice that there is these things that are prehistory to us, and it feels like there's shadows of this that, as you sort of allude to, in the Bible. But to think about the things that happened before time, if you will. I think it's a fascinating hypothesis and idea to sort of suss out what happened before we arrived on the scene, right? Because we know that, as you would call the elder race, but there's these heavenly beings, there's the angels that just a Greek word for messenger. We can ad nauseum talk about that on the show, but there's this whole thing that happens before we arrive on the scene that sort of sits in the shadow place, because we're really, the Bible story of birthright in Adam, and he would give him dominion on earth, and then everything that happens with fall, and then of course the work of Jesus Christ to redeem that. But there is a bigger story. There is a pre-story, a prequel, if
Yeah.
you will, to
Intimations of this story. Remember, so much of the Bible is esoteric, especially prophecy. And people think that the idea of esotericism derives from the occult. That's not true. King Solomon said, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, and the glory of kings to search out a thing." And so much of this, I believe, there's a lot of information, much of the information pertaining to things that transpired in the universe before we showed up on the scene is intimated in the Old Testament. And if you'll indulge me,
we will. We absolutely will.
I would like to read
I heard that's a good little book there. Yeah.
I'd like to read an excerpt from his excellent book, Birthright.
Just picked it up.
If I can see it. And I got to do this because it's difficult for me really to properly.
Hey, you've thought this through before.
No,
No.
this is the first time.
All right.
How's it going so far? Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to read this, and this is going to give you guys an understanding of what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
So remember, we're talking about Rahab. Rahab it's a very mysterious thing. If you consult the scholars on Rahab, there's a panoply of different opinions as to what Rahab is, because you'll see in a moment that Rahab shows up in very interesting context, and nobody really knows what to make of Rahab. And it's what did Chuck Missler used to say? When you find something like a contradiction or something interesting that you can't figure out in the Bible, rejoice, because you stumbled upon something very important. And I think that certainly pertains to Rahab. Here we go. Bear with me. The connotations of the word Rahab, fierce, insolent, proud, boaster, are the calling cards of its renegade prince. References to Rahab in the biblical text are distinctly bellicose and directly associated with the dragon's rebellion and the triumph of the king who vanquished him. I'm going to read 3 verses from Job, Isaiah, and Psalms. The pillars of heaven tremble and are astounded at his rebuke. By his power he stilled the sea. By his understanding he shattered Rahab. 2 things here. Stilling the sea, shattering Rahab. Okay, the next verse. Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake as in days of old, the generations of long ago. Was it not you who cut Rahab in pieces, who pierced the dragon? You rule the raging of the sea. When its waves rise, you still them. You have broken Rahab in pieces as one who is slain. You have scattered your enemies with your mighty arm. Now let's notice a couple of things in these verses. And again, first one was Job, second one was Isaiah, third one was Psalm. There's a few themes in each of these verses. You have a stilling of the sea, right? You rule the raging of the sea. When its waves rise, you still them. Okay, that's one theme. The second theme, the shattering of Rahab. Whatever this thing Rahab is, it's being shattered. Third theme, the dragon is involved, associated with Rahab. And then the fourth thing that I want you to notice is this is one of those places in the Bible where you can, the Son of God, i.e. Jesus of Nazareth, is present in these verses, but you don't see him unless you know where to look.
Right.
He says in the second verses, O arm of the Lord, awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. It's in Isaiah 51:9. And the other one says, you have scattered your enemies with your mighty arm. And when you realize, and I talk about this in the book, we don't have time to go too far down this path here. How much time do we have, by the way?
You got plenty of time.
You're looking at it right there?
Second an hour.
Oh, okay. So the arm of the Lord in the Bible, or
Just get started.
or the right, I'm just getting started. Or the right hand of God is an allusion to the Son of God, the King of Heaven. Every time. Yeah. And so, who is stilling the sea? Who is ruling the raging of the sea? Who is shattering Rahab? The Son of God. In days of old, he pierced the dragon. I'll continue. Stilling and ruling the raging sea are metaphors for quelling and subduing insurrection. The shattering of Rahab was the decisive blow that pierced the dragon and brought his rebellion to an abrupt and devastating end. When Rahab exploded, its smoldering shards rained down on the planets in its vicinity, each one striking with a force many thousands of times more powerful than a nuclear bomb, igniting their atmospheres with a firestorm hot enough to liquefy solid rock and vaporize everything else. The impacts would have triggered chains of volcanic eruptions and mile-high tidal waves, melting and washing away every vestige of the rebel kingdoms so that nothing would be left to posterity. And then I'll continue here as well, and then we'll pause and discuss this. Personified as a spectator to this cataclysmic event. Notice this. So I'll preface this, what I'm about to read. So I'm jumping into the middle of this chapter about Rahab here. I set up all of this in the beginning of this chapter. And what I believe is happening here, what I believe is being described, as I said earlier, is an insurrection that's being put down, the raging of the sea, that the right hand of God, the Son of God, is stilling the waters. He's calming the raging of the sea. He's putting down insurrection. And he's doing so with the armies of the kingdom of heaven. Personified as a spectator, and this is in a galactic context, this is not happening on Earth, personified as a spectator to this cataclysmic event, the earth saw and trembled as the insurgent forces of the apostate princes, the gods, were incinerated before the Lord, his garments stained crimson, striding forward in the greatness of his strength.
We're super excited to introduce Beam Kids All-in-One Super Powder to our listeners. It just launched, and you need to get your hands on it today. It has more than 40 essential ingredients to fuel healthy growth, including greens, pre- and probiotics, fruits, and vitamins. And what's even better, it comes in a chocolate milk flavor kids love. And my son Jack absolutely loves this
That's
stuff.
true. My kids love it too. Mix it up, put a couple scoops in, and my kids drank it great. They actually liked it. It's hard getting healthy stuff in our kids these days.
That's right. You just got to mix 1 scoop of Beam Kids with 8 ounces of water or milk. We use milk at my house. Shake, stir, or froth, and enjoy, making it a convenient addition to any meal or drink. And it's been developed by pediatricians and friend of the show, Sean Johnson East. So this is a really cool product that I really love.
It's awesome. My kids are a little bit older, and they still like it. So your kids will too. And if you notice any improvements in health and energy, Luke, because my kids are running around like crazy.
My son's wild, and he loves his chocolate milk first thing in the morning, and it's really lived up to expectations, not only in terms of its quality, but as in effectiveness, is getting those essential vitamins and minerals into his little body.
That's right. If you want to join in on the Beam Kids, it's now available online at shopbeam.com/blurry. Because you're listening to our show, you can take advantage of their limited time pricing up to 35% off plus 2 free gifts using code blurry.
Yeah, get your Beam Kids and your free gifts by heading over to shopbeam.com/blurry. Enter the code blurry. That's shopbeam.com/blurry and use code blurry for up to 35% off.
I'm going to read here from Psalm 97. Listen to this, okay? Remember, the earth is a spectator in this verse. Fire goes before him and burns up his adversaries round about. His lightnings lit up the world. The earth saw and trembled. The mountains melted like wax at the presence of the Lord. Worship him, all you gods. Isn't this interesting that this verse is being directed to the gods? Worship him, all you gods. Zion heard this and was glad, and the daughters of Judah have rejoiced because of your judgments, O Lord, for you are the Lord most high over all the earth. You are exalted far above all gods. Okay, so we have the earth spectating here. There's this event Fire goes before him and burns up all his enemies. There's this cataclysmic event that melts the mountains like wax. And who is this addressed to? Worship him, all you gods. Psalm 89 provides a fitting synopsis of the concepts, presented earlier in this chapter. Now listen to this. Written in memoriam of the dragon's rebellion, the psalm proclaims a solemn warning to all those who would dare to defy the King of heaven and rise up against him. This is Psalm 89. For who in the skies, cosmos, can be compared to the Lord? Who among the heavenly beings is like the Lord, a God greatly to be feared in the council of the holy ones, and awesome above all who are around him? O Lord of hosts, armies, who is mighty as you are, O Lord, with your faithfulness, or faithful, all around you? You rule the raging of the sea, insurrection. When its waves rise, you still them. You crushed Rahab like a carcass. You scattered your enemy with your mighty arm, the Son of God. The heavens are yours, the earth also is yours, the world and all that is in it. You have founded them. Now I want you to think about it. I hope you're all following me here. So the right hand of God is his Son, who is the King of heaven. This king is marching out on extraterrestrial battlefields and vanquishing the dragon long before the creation of mankind in days of old. So this is, as I said, intimations of this galactic conflict. And remember, Jesus is the right hand of God. Over and over again, it's the right hand of God that does what? Stills the raging sea.
Yeah.
Isn't that a hallmark of Jesus of Nazareth?
Yeah. Controlling the chaos.
Remember when they're in the boat, the disciples are with Jesus in the boat?
About that. Yeah.
I'll read it. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, Jesus, asleep on a pillow. And they woke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. Who stills the raging of the sea? The right hand of God. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? Well, if they had paid attention to the Old Testament, I think they would have realized, and they did realize later on, who can this be? It's the Son of God, the right hand of God, who pierced the dragon and shattered Rahab in pieces. And so this depiction of Jesus as the one who puts down insurrection, he stills the seas, the raging of the seas. He literally does this in his ministry on earth. And I think as a calling card of who he is. And remember, after he does that, he goes to Gadara and is confronted by the Gadarene demoniac. And the demons throw themselves at his feet. What have we to do with you, you Son of God? They knew who he was.
Yeah.
Why have you come to torment us before the time? Of course, that's an allusion to the book of Enoch.
So do you believe that this might play a part of why humans were created and how we were created?
I believe that we were created in consequence or as a consequence of something that preceded us. I believe that the earth was inhabited, and indeed, I would go so far as to say, although I can't prove it, that the other planets in our solar system are probably also inhabited. And I talk about how that could be in the book. And I'm not here to promote my book. I'm just using it as notes.
You can promote it.
That's okay. It's okay, Tim. That's all right.
So,
We're selling copies out of the back of your trunk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got bootlegs.
We got bootleg Barinos. Right. So what's the purpose of Rahab then? Like why, what was going on there before it blew up, you think?
well, I think that the earth and the other planets in our solar system were inhabited, that it was a pre-Adamic civilization. It was probably governed by the elder race, but there may have been other entities also here and there who are being governed. Remember, we've talked about this on your show. I believe that the sons of God rule in the kingdom of heaven. Not all sentient beings are sons. We were supposed to be sons. Indeed, Adam was a son of God. That means he was in the family. And this is why I believe that we were created in the image and likeness of the Elohim, because the siblings look similar to one another. It's the mark of our family, that we're part of the family of God. And so imagine this. You have this, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. You have this insurrection that breaks out, and this renegade prince brings with him into this rebellion other princes who have their own principalities. That's what a principality is, by the way. It's a realm governed by a prince.
Yeah.
And they join him in this uprising against the king of heaven. And this huge battle ensues. And I wish I had it bookmarked here, but I don't. This huge battle ensues, and you have, in the aftermath of this uprising, after the Son of God puts it down, we have an untold period of time that transpires, and then a decision is made to renew the earth and establish a new regent. But who is going to rule the earth now in the aftermath of this rebellion? Who can be trusted to rule and not rebel? And the answer comes forth from the council, as Dr. Heiser would describe it. The council deliberated and decided that they would create a new being, a human being, as a younger sibling to the elder race, who could rule and restore the earth, unmarred by the events of the past. And there's a I failed to mark it, the exact verses here, but I wish I had them here. But there's a couple of verses. I'm going to try and recall them. I believe both of them are from the book of Job, in which it's stated that he puts no trust in his holy ones. His angels he charges with error. And I believe this is the disposition of the king in the wake of the insurrection. And so the decision is made, as I said, to create a younger sibling to govern the earth who's not tainted by the affairs of the past. That's where our story begins. That's where our chapter opens up. And I want to
Real quick, what else could Rahab be if it wasn't a planet that exploded?
there's all different kinds of ideas, and honestly, I don't even recall what they are, but there's a bunch of different postulations on what Rahab is.
Because it seems like the earth is separate in these verses. Like it's its own thing, and then there's something else
spectating.
happening.
That's right. It's spectating this thing that's happening. And what kind of a cataclysm could melt mountains like wax?
Nukes.
Death Star.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but also that's a better
right,
answer.
yeah.
That's a little
Well,
better
no,
answer.
you're actually closer than you think. How about a planet exploding
Exactly.
in the vicinity of planet Earth?
Giant laser.
So listen to this. So
This is all planned out, Tim. I don't know if you know that. We were
all right, so I'm gonna give you a flavor of what, and then we're gonna do something very interesting here. So if you'll indulge me,
Oh, we will. I appreciate the formality.
I feel like you need a
We're like, no, we're not reading from your book anymore, Tim. We're done.
story time.
All right, it's Tim Alberino. Yeah.
The Song of Deborah, memorialized in the book of Judges, describes the king of heaven marching against the dragon on the galactic battlefield of Edom. Now, we'll talk about Edom in a moment. Now listen, this is from the Song of Deborah. Hero kings, give ear, O princes. Lord, when you went out from Seir, when you marched from the field of Edom, the earth trembled and the heavens poured. The clouds also poured water. The mountains melted before the Lord. They fought from the heavens, the stars, from their courses fought. They fought from the heavens, the stars from their courses fought. Now, what are stars metaphoric? What's
Heavenly beings. Yeah.
Stars are metaphorical for heavenly beings. As previously, well, I was going to read where I write, as previously mentioned, when titles of regency are directly juxtaposed in the biblical text, I mentioned that previously in the chapter. In this case, kings and princes, they often signal a distinction of realms and rulers, the terrestrial and the extraterrestrial. Kings of the human race and their elder race counterparts. The oracles of Edom are intended to convey the scope and nature of a cosmic conflict that began long ago on extraterrestrial worlds, but is destined to culminate on Earth at the Battle of Armageddon. And we're going to compare two verses, and I want you to listen to the way that these verses are framed. If we compare the prophecy of Isaiah 63, looking back to the Battle of Edom, and again, we'll discuss Edom in a moment, with the vision of John in Revelation 19, looking forward to the Battle of Armageddon, a clear correlation emerges. Both of these passages portray the King of Heaven making war, his raiment stained in blood as he treads the winepress of God's wrath, writes Isaiah. Who is this coming from Edom, from Bozrah, the capital of Edom, with his garments stained crimson? Who is this robed in splendor, striding forward in the greatness of his strength? It is I, proclaiming victory, mighty to save. Why are your garments red like those of one treading the winepress? I have trodden the winepress alone. From the nations no one was with me. I trampled them in my anger and trod them down in my wrath. Their blood splattered on my garments, and I stained all my clothing. That's Isaiah. Now John, Revelation. Then I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his head are many diadems, crowns. And he has a name written that no one knows but himself. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood, Isaiah, and the name by which he is called is the Word of God. And the armies of heaven, arrayed in fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses. From his mouth comes a sharp sword, and with which to strike down the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. He will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God, the Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So I want you to notice something here. This is a depiction of the Son of God striding on a battlefield with his robe dipped in blood.
Yeah.
I believe that the reference in Isaiah is a veiled reference to something that happened in the past. In Revelation, he's coming again to finish the job. And the battle is with the same adversary.
Can I ask a question, just as it'll be an opinion question, because you can only prognosticate, but do you think there was a shared, maybe ancient knowledge, like maybe passed down from the time of Adam about this that also existed as an undercurrent? Or do you think the most of the information that we have, biblically speaking, comes out of the prophets, was a prophetic download, really, of God saying this is kind of some things that happened? It's honestly an opinion question, but you maybe wonder, like, how did they know in Psalm, right? How did they know some of these things?
I would say they didn't. I would say that they were writing under inspiration, and they really did not understand the depth, the magnitude of what they were writing.
Yeah, I was curious. You don't know. Maybe Adam and God walked in the garden, and God told him.
Oh, that's very possible.
That's
That's a good footnote here, because when you look at the garden episode and you think about Eve, for those of you who've listened to me enough, no, I have a very different view of the Garden of Eden than most people. But when you look at that whole episode, Eve isn't being tempted to eat an apple. She was being tempted with the knowledge of the elder sibling, of the elder race, to become like them. Like, God is withholding from you. He's not telling you what I will teach you. I mean, this is even the way that and of course that's in reference to the serpent, the dragon, that's serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan. And so Eve was beguiled by the serpent because she was being offered something that Yahweh wasn't giving her. And it was the temptation to become like the gods. And that doesn't just mean an immortality. I mean, they were already immortal, Adam and Eve. That means it's the tree of knowledge. That means having knowledge, the knowledge that the elder race had. And so the point here is that Adam and Eve are interacting with a very ancient being in possession of knowledge. And indeed, if you look at the mystery schools and you want to understand Luciferianism, it's the gospel upside down. It's the biblical narrative upside down. Because in the mystery schools, they teach that Adam and Eve, that Yahweh was imprisoning Adam and Eve, and that he was inhibiting them from becoming like the gods and from attaining the knowledge, and that it was in fact the serpent who was the benefactor of mankind and who was offering the knowledge to mankind and offering Adam and Eve the opportunity to apotheosize and become like their elder siblings. That's the gospel of the mystery schools. That's the gospel of Luciferianism, which again is an inversion of the gospel of Christ. Right. And so I think, so to answer your question, I think that Adam and Eve were created in the wake of this rebellion, in my estimation. And God wanted them to rule and to have this reset and to rule the earth as faithful regents, the kingdom of heaven, a reformation of the earth, new regents on earth to rule, and to be unsullied by the affairs of the past, right? And so I think that there was information given, a lot of information given to Adam and Eve. A lot of knowledge that came from God, but he didn't want them to be implicated in the rebellion and in that insurrectionary spirit of the dragon. And yet he permitted the dragon to tempt them. Right. It was a test of loyalty. Yeah. There's a lot that can be said. That gets very philosophical.
Well, it kind of reminds me, Lou, like the quote, I was there 3,000 years ago when we marched on the slopes of Mount Doom, like where did he get that idea?
That's next year's theme.
All right. Yeah.
No, you're getting to eat on, but I just, you wonder, like the understanding of the ancients to sort of imagine or not even imagine, to speak about the things before time, right? Like, I just think that idea of passing down knowledge, or even given that as you say, as inspired, is interesting, because it is that, like you talk about with Solomon, it is this sort of, it's prophetic, so it's like a code. You have to kind of figure out, unlock how much is iconography and how much of this is.
Well, because I think the whole thing happened, like we talk about Genesis 6 all the time. There's not much backstory to that. Right, so there would be this prior knowledge that they had. Why couldn't they have a prior knowledge of Rahab? That just worked its way in, like the story of the Nephilim worked themselves.
Yeah,
it's just not there's not a lot of content.
They very well may have had that.
But you were getting to eat them. I know I kind of derailed that.
Well, if you indulge me one more time.
I'm going to read it.
I'm going to read the last portion I read.
You got to give him a whiskey now.
You're going to find something very intriguing here. I'm going to read this last portion. And again, bear with me for a moment.
Yeah. We'll indulge you, yes.
A closer look at Isaiah 63 forces us to contend with a perplexing scenario. Notice how the king is wroth with the nations because they did not support him in battle. I have trodden the winepress alone. From the nations, no one was with me. The circumstance is emphasized in the verses that follow. I looked, but there was no one to help. I was appalled that no one gave support. Remember, this is God speaking here. So my own arm achieved salvation for me, and my own wrath sustained me. I trampled the nations in my anger. In my wrath, I made them drunk and poured their blood on the ground. Remarkably, the Song of Deborah identifies the faithless bystanders who declined to join the ranks of the king when he marched on the field of Edom. This is Judges 5, verse 23. Curse ye, Meroz, said the angel of the Lord. Curse ye bitterly the inhabitants thereof, because they came not to the help of the Lord, to to the help of the Lord against the mighty. Two questions necessarily arise from this scenario. Who are the mighty against whom the Lord requested support? And who or what is Meroz? The answer to the first question is apparent: the forces of the dragon's confederacy. And according to ancient rabbinical tradition, the answer to the second question is a planet. In his seminal work, Sidonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars, the late researcher extraordinaire David Flynn explains. This will be the end of my reading here. The Talmud records that Meroz is the name of a planet. This planet, Meroz, was thought to be inhabited, as the verse literally explains, "Curse ye bitterly the inhabitants thereof." The context in which the reference to Meroz is found defines it as a planet and not as a neighboring city. One verse earlier, Deborah stated, "From the heavens they fought, from the stars from their orbits." The Zohar also follows the opinion that Meroz is a star, yet it also states that its inhabitants refers to its camp. Additionally, the Sefer HaBrit, and this is David Flynn writing, explains that the beings of Meroz are Ba'alei Sekel A'u Mada, masters of intelligence and science, but they lack the component of Bechira, which means free will. The Midrash teaches that there were 7 worlds. The Zohar states that the 7 worlds were separated by a firmament and were inhabited. Although not inhabited by man, they were the domain of intelligent creatures. Now, so that's an excerpt from David Flynn's book, Sidonia, and which, by the way, Sidonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars by David Flynn is the most consequential book I've ever read in my entire life. And so what he's pointing out here is that rabbinic tradition, including the Talmud, the Zohar, and a couple of other ancient scripts, they held that Meroz, who did not come to the aid of the Lord, represented a civilization on a planet. And that these people were masters of intelligence and science, but they lacked the human component of free will. Well, that sounds a whole lot like gray aliens to me.
Here we go with
So this is very, very intriguing, and there's a lot more that can be said in support of this idea, right? That there was a galactic rebellion vanquished by the right hand of God, which is a reference to the Son of God unequivocally in the Old Testament, that the King of Heaven, his robe stained in blood, marched upon the battlefield of Edom. So what is Edom? But go ahead. Well, what is Edom, Nate?
Turn the tables on me then. See how this goes. No, I think doing the show for as long as we have, like what you're laying out makes sense based on the stories that we hear. Like, why is Bigfoot and UFOs associated with each other? Some people say they're being dropped off from where? Maybe someplace like this. Or, a lot of people think UFOs just are on Earth, but why are they here? Where did they come from originally, right? Maybe some escaped from such a place. So you have some people that are some entities that aren't from here, but you also have another place. You know what I'm saying? Like there is this, if there was an exit from somewhere else, and some of them weren't originally from here, it would make sense based on some of the stories we hear and this advanced technology that you're talking about with science. And I don't know, I just think a lot of people think that all the creatures just are in the earth and from the earth. And I think there seems to suggest, based on the stories we hear, there's something, they're from other places. I'm almost confused sometimes when they're here. We're not originally from here. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So this helps make sense. Still don't understand that, but gives context to some of those weird stories that we hear that are I don't know.
And there's something that we should understand when we approach the Old Testament. There's 2 ways to approach the Old Testament. The first way is to approach it in its cultural context, which is the ancient Near East. So the Bible is written in the same, dare I say, esoteric tradition of many other ancient books, although what distinguishes the Bible is this is a message from God to man, inspired by the Spirit of God and delivered through the ages to mankind. But it's still written in the same tradition. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there's information that's conveyed in the Old Testament, especially in the prophetic content, that is apparent on the surface, and it seems to be talking about one thing, but beneath the surface, it's addressing something else. And we see this continually.
Yeah.
You guys will be familiar with the allusion to Satan in Ezekiel, where the prophet is referencing the king of Tyre. And almost all scholars will concede that the king of Tyre is an allusion to the dragon, to Satan, right? You were in Edom, you walked among the stones of fire, which I actually think are planets. So this is the way. I got ahead of myself. So if we want to understand a lot of the symbolism in the iconography, and this is a statement I can make with great confidence. If we want to understand the symbols in the Old Testament, the iconography, prophetic iconography, then we have to reference the ancient Near East, because that's where those symbols come from.
Right.
The symbols in the prophetic context and in the Old Testament are not idiosyncratic to the ancient Hebrews. In other words, they don't originate with the ancient Hebrews. They pre-exist them. They come from Sumer. They come from Akkadian. They come from Persia. They come from Babylon. They come from ancient Egypt. And so we have to return to the ancient Near East and familiarize ourselves with the symbols and their meaning, and then interpret them in the Bible. Because the Bible is using that symbolism, not inventing it, okay? A good example is the cherubim. Cherubim, so many people who hear the word cherubim or cherub, many people presume that cherubim are idiosyncratic of the ancient Hebrews, like they invented the cherubim. But as I'm sure most of us are familiar with, cherubim are all over the ancient Near East. They're in, most famously, Babylon. Still to this day, you can see the cherubim painted in vivid color on some of the ruins from Babylon. They're in ancient Egypt, and it's the same creature. The same creature, a composite of 4 animals. Well, 4 creatures: a man, an eagle, a lion, and an ox. And it's always the same. It's a composite of these creatures or a mix of several of them. But usually it's a composite of those 4 creatures. And the cherubim in the Bible are described either having 4 faces: the face of a man, the face of an eagle, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, or in a composite form, the head of a man, the four parts of a lion, the hind parts of an ox, and the wings of an eagle. These are the depictions of cherubim. So in order to understand what that cherubim represents, you look to the symbolism of the ancient Near East. You look to the meaning of the symbols in the cultures that predated the Hebrews. Okay, that's just an example. That is reading the information and the prophecies, the iconography in their context, which is the ancient Near East. Then the other way to approach so much of what's in the Old Testament, not just in the prophecies, but mainly what's in the prophecies, is to understand the cryptic messaging that's happening. Because you can't get away from that. It's happening. I mean, cryptic messaging, that's called, one method of cryptic messaging is called a parable. Parable is a cryptic messaging, let's call it a platform, where you create a story, and that story is not supposed to be taken literally. You're supposed to derive the meaning from the story, right? So when you look at the Bible and you're studying something like Rahab or Edom, and the reason why I'm saying this is because in order to talk about Edom, we have to define this. You're going to see that a prophecy can pertain to the neighbors living in the vicinity of Israel, like Edom, or the other Canaanite nations, or Israel, or Egypt, or whatever. That's the surface level. That's the contemporary understanding of what's happening. But there's a deeper level, just like with the king of Tyre. There was a king of Tyre. And everything written about the king of Tyre in Ezekiel did pertain to a king of Tyre. But it also pertained to a non-human entity who was much older and much more powerful than the king of Tyre. You follow me?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how so much of the Old Testament, especially as it pertains to prophecy, is written. You have the cultural context for the deciphering of the symbolism, and then you have this dual layering of information that is simultaneously addressing things terrestrial and things extraterrestrial, things physical and things spiritual. Okay? So I had to preface this discussion about Edom with that, because Edom is one such case. And I lied to you before. I'm going to read one more part of my book.
All right, here we go.
Because it's easier for me to read it than to try and remember it. Just as Israel is another name for Jacob, the son of Isaac, so Edom is another name for Esau, his twin brother. The Israelites were the descendants of Jacob, and the Edomites the descendants of Esau. Edom was the arch enemy of Israel. A peculiar contempt for the Edomites is manifest in the scriptures, as they are the recipients of more pronouncements of judgment than any other nation. In the same way that the nation of Israel was representative of the kingdom of heaven on earth, so Edom was representative of its ancient extraterrestrial adversary. The contention between Israel and Edom is an allegory of the war that raged and rages still between the kingdom and the insurgency. Indeed, Jacob is christened with the name Israel after physically contending with Yahweh at the fords of the river Jabbok. The name Israel means Yahweh contends. The name Edom means red. You might have an idea what I think.
I know where you're going.
You might have an idea what I think Edom is. An iconographic, who wrote this? An iconographic portrait of the adversary, with whom Yahweh contends is presented to the Apostle John in the form of a red dragon. When the names and concepts they represent are combined, Israel and Edom convey the cosmic conflict in which mankind is inescapably embroiled. Yahweh contends, and that's Israel, with the red dragon. Now, what is Edom? So Edom, as I said there, is the recipient of more pronouncements of judgment than any other nation in the Bible. It is constantly cast as the archenemy of Israel. Israel comes from Jacob. Edom comes from Esau. Edom means red. The land of Edom is a land of red soil, if you've ever seen it. It's a land of red. It is red. It's red soil. And does anybody remember what color Esau was when he was born? Isn't that weird? Like the red spawn of Bigfoot. He came out hairy.
Kind of. And pale.
Not so much anymore. A few years ago, yeah.
Hairy, pale, and red. Huh?
Very attractive. Very attractive.
But I don't know. I didn't say that actually in there. I think that's reading between the wires.
It's in there. It's esoteric, very hidden. Can't tell.
The dual meaning is not that. Actually.
So,
That's what we're here for.
you have this strange situation in which there's a lot. I won't go down the rabbit trail here, but there's this strange situation in which you have Jacob and Esau. Jacob's born just a regular dude. Esau is so hairy that Jacob goes and puts on he has a goat hair strapped to his forearm. Goat hair. So that when his father touches his arm, he thinks it's his son. Now that's bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, animal hair is completely different than human hair. Human hair is soft. We're talking about coarse hair. So there's something very different about Esau, and we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But he's red. He's hairy and red. So you have this theme, red, 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 red dragon, red Esau, red Edom. And then you have all of these pronouncements of judgment against Edom. And suddenly you find that the Son of God is marching on a battlefield of Edom, vanquishing the dragon, the red dragon. And in the midst of this, Rahab is obliterated. So this is, I can't do this here because it's very complex. And by the way, much of this comes from Sidonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars, David Flynn. Long story short, I believe that Edom is a reference to the planet Mars, the red planet. And that sounds arbitrary, but believe me, it's not. There are so many references to Mars. Even the Nephilim have a connection to Mars. And
How so?
Yeah.
well, that's very complex. That takes us down a that would take us into territory that would take a very
They are
long time to
red.
unfold.
Red hair.
So
So
the ancients believed.
You're out of here.
The ancients believed in the Hermetic tradition. By the way, Hermeticism. Does anyone want to guess where that comes from?
Hermes.
Hermon.
Oh man, I was wrong.
Mount Hermon. That's the Hermetic tradition, is the tradition of the mystery schools. It's the occult. It's Luciferianism.
Yeah.
Then it's the knowledge of Hermon. That's where Hermeticism comes from. And of course, Hermon is where the Watchers descended.
Yeah. 6. Yeah.
And so there's the ancients believed, and I won't go down this path very far because it gets very complex. The ancients believed, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Mesopotamians, the Greeks, the Romans, that the gods descended or leapt to the earth from a very particular place. It wasn't just abstract, they descended from heaven. No, they came to the earth, and I say leapt because this is expressed in an ancient Roman tradition, a Roman, what's the word I'm looking for, festival, in which the priests of Mars would dance around the city of Rome and leap. And it was in commemoration of the gods who leapt to the earth from Mars. And you'll find that, again, in the ancient traditions, consistently, the gods are depicted as having come to the earth from the planet Mars. And the ancients believed, and let's frame this more specifically, the adepts of the mysteries, through the centuries, through the ages, believe that Mars holds secret knowledge for mankind, and that when we go to Mars, it's going to unlock something. We're going to find something on Mars, we're going to discover something, and it's going to lead to the resurrection of the empire of the gods on earth. This is what they believe. Has anybody heard of a guy named Elon Musk?
Say someone's trying to go there. Yeah.
it's trying to get there.
So we are very close to going.
And we've talked a little bit about maybe that's
You're
why.
going? Are you going to? Is
Huh?
it we? Are you going?
Yeah, we're going.
Again? Oh, we
We're
are.
after the show. Going to
We're
Mars?
Blurry Con 4.
We're already on the Death Star. It's not going to be hard to get there.
I brought more to get you there. You know, there's similar talks about that's why we went to the moon. There was something there we needed to get. You know, I think if you go down that rabbit trail enough, there's something off about the traditional conspiracy theories about the moon. But it seems as though my perspective is that we kind of had to go there. You know, it starts out, it was faked and all that. And then you kind of keep pondering, why were they faking and all this? But it seems maybe some knowledge there, something there, some part of the story. Here we go.
I don't know that we want to open up the moon can of worms.
Well, you don't have to. I'm just saying.
Well, Tim, do you think like on that
Mars.
note, do you think that like some of the things that we have discovered or photos or things about Mars itself leads to a similar conclusion?
Well, you'll recall that back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a gentleman named Richard Hoagland who was going around, and he was lecturing, and he wrote a book about the structures on Mars. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
And what happened was there's a particular area on Mars, Cydonia. By the way, the ancient Sidonians were what was called the Pelasgians, who were a pre-Adamic civilization who worshipped the gods, who leapt from Mars, who came from Mars. They, in the post-flood world, were the Sidonians, and these were the Sidonians also worshipped the offspring of the gods, the Nephilim. The Sidonians became the Phoenicians. And so when we say Cydonia, they're called Sidonians. Remember Sidon, kingdom of Tyre, and Sidon. Sidon was a Sidonian kingdom that was oftentimes in opposition to Israel.
Yeah.
And they lived in Canaan on the ocean. Probably, actually, I think they lived. Well, some of it was up in Lebanon and in different places, Byblos and Sidon, and they had various kingdoms. But anyway, the point is that the name Cydonia, the Sidonians, who were Canaanites, are directly associated. Oh, I'm getting a phone call.
Getting the call.
I should have let that.
Just kept going.
I should let that ringer keep going. It was quite appropriate for this kind of actually Stranger Things. So the point is that there's a direct connection between the Sidonians and Cydonia on Mars. And if you recall, as I said, Richard Hoagland was going around talking about the face on Mars. You remember that?
Yeah.
There's the whole thing about the face on Mars and the pyramid on Mars and all that. Yeah. And then NASA came out and tried to debunk the whole thing. The interesting thing is they came out because you had really blurry, low-res pictures.
Perfect.
The face on Mars.
You're better.
The face on Mars, the pyramid on Mars, in the section of Mars called Cydonia, in that area called Cydonia. And it's not coincidental that it's called Cydonia, that part of Mars. And you had all these artifacts on Mars, and then NASA comes out with kind of even more blurry pictures debunking it, saying, oh, no, this is natural formations. And I don't believe it for a second. I think that Cydonia is a city on Mars, in ruin, in a state of ruination.
Wow.
And that it is, and hear me when I say this.
I'm hearing him.
It is a major objective of the Luciferian elite, the mystery school adepts, to go to Cydonia on Mars. And this is actually this has been a goal of theirs for centuries, indeed thousands of years. And we're about to accomplish it. We're very close to accomplishing it. And I think, and as did David Flynn, who passed away in 2012, by the way, I believe that when we go to Cydonia on Mars, it's going to unlock some of the events that are going to happen at the end of the age. So anyway, Edom, in my estimation, is obviously the nation of Edom that was subjugated to Israel for a long time, that the neighbor of Israel, yes, Edom is that, but it's also something else. And I believe it's an illusion of the planet Mars.
It's an illusion, Michael.
So it's like refugees that made it here. It's kind of what you're describing.
From Mars.
Yeah.
Well, again, according to the ancients, the gods leapt to the earth from Mars, and that would mean in the biblical context, specifically the Book of Enoch, that the Watchers leapt to the earth from Mars. So
it's like a very pragmatical way of thinking about it. Very
well. It's the way that the mystery school adepts think about it.
Yeah. Which is something we've talked about a lot with you on the show. It's trying to put just more basic human terms that we can understand these concepts by, angels and humans were alike. And that's how this whole, one of the major problems in the Old Testament, Sizer said that one of the three major problems. I think a lot of Christians think about it in, more of a Gnostic view instead of just, maybe they're just, like you say, they're our elder sibling, very simple way of saying it, but a lot of Christians don't want to think about it like that.
Well, it is a totally different worldview when you think about, in very amorphous terms, angels descended from heaven, wherever that is. It's very different when you say, or the Watchers descended from heaven. It's very different to say the Watchers descended from Mars. So that's a totally different perspective, and it makes it real. It's like, wait a minute, I can see that place with my telescope, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, to summarize, there's a lot more, by the way. I talk a lot about Edom. Get Sidonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars by David Flynn. And you'll see there's a lot, especially the way Flynn documents it. I document some of it in my book, Edom, and how I believe it references Mars. Flynn does a deep dive on Edom and Mars and all the traditions of the ancient world that reference back to Mars and the Nephilim and the Watchers, and it's really quite remarkable. It really is.
Would this kind of explain some more of the nefarious things that NASA's up to try to keep this knowledge sort of hidden? Because, you know, oftentimes people will say, you know, they're up to, like, NASA's lying. But I would be like, well, you know, it seems like they're trying to cover up stuff more than they're lying, you know?
Well, so here, there's sort of, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a little bit of clarifying I have to do here. So people who listen to me regularly know that I believe we did go to the moon. And in fact, there's proof, actually, that we went to the moon. What's the proof? You can actually, if you have a powerful enough telescope, like a really powerful one, you can see the tracks of the rover on the moon, number one. We also put mirrors up there. And we bounce lasers off the mirrors on the moon, and we've been able to measure that it's moving away from the Earth, like, I don't know what it is, 0.25 inches or 0.5 inches every year, because the mirrors on the surface of the moon, we're bouncing a laser off of them that we put up there. But like I said, you can also see that if you have a powerful, like university level telescope, you can see the tracks. Okay, and they don't disappear because there's no wind. So there's two things happening here in my mind. There's what's happening in the public space, and there's what's happening in behind the scenes, let's say. The moon, this applies to the moon as well. But as it pertains to Mars, I think we're already there. Honestly, I personally think we're already on Mars. I think that there's a secret space program, that we went to Mars probably a decade ago. We have established underground bases there. And there's a lot of reasons why I believe this. We only have 5 minutes left, but there's a lot of reasons why I believe it. That's a cliffhanger. And so but that's not the public revelation of Mars. The public revelation of Mars is the spaceships, SpaceX, and what we're getting ready to do. And I think that there will be a public revelation of something extraordinary when we go to Mars. Namely, that somebody was there a long, long time ago.
Wow. So I have a question. I'm sure some of you guys are thinking this. And we pondered this question with everyone for 4 years. And could Bigfoot?
I was just about to say, what are my thoughts on Bigfoot? I knew that question was coming.
Rahab, you know, could he come from one of these places?
It is very possible. That's one of the things that certainly one of the ideas that I have about Bigfoot is that, God, we're into Bigfoot with 4 minutes left.
We got time, actually. We're ahead of schedule.
Okay, so. Well, one of the postulations that I find to be quite plausible is that Bigfoot is not native to planet Earth. That's a possibility. There are other possibilities as well, but one of them certainly is that Bigfoot is not from here.
Yeah, I mean, we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and people will have testimony. Some people say they talk to these things, and that's kind of I don't know. I mean, you kind of have to piece it all together, right? When you do a podcast like this, I think what you're saying too is, like, you start out with these ideas. Oh yeah, you fake the moon landing, but you, like I said, you ponder the Bigfoot, you ponder these ideas for long enough, and you're like, that kind of is an easy answer, right? And it doesn't have to be doesn't have to be like a difficult explanation, but a lot of times easy answers. You hear more stories.
Oversimplification.
Yeah. So,
and that's an oversimplification, because if you say, did we fake the moon landing? My answer would be yes. And then if you ask me, did we go to the moon? My answer would be yes.
Yeah.
It's a both and, because we had to fake some of the footage. There's two reasons why we would fake the footage. Number one, in case the mission failed, we wanted the Russians to think it succeeded no matter what. And then number two, and this was the unexpected part, what if you find stuff you can't film?
Sure. Well, people always go back to the interview of the astronauts after their return, and just how odd and weird that was. I saw another podcast for another time.
Well, no, it's
Blurry
it's
after dark.
it's a great point, because those astronauts. I always forget the third guy's name. Buzz Aldrin and
Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong. What's the third one? Jimmy? I don't remember. What's it?
Michael Collins. Michael Bolton.
He
was up there.
Yeah,
It's
Michael
Mike.
Bolton. So Armstrong, Aldrin, and Bolton, when they came back,
That's a famous song of his.
All of them. Me too. I'm the same way.
well, they were very crestfallen at that conference. And I had a friend, and I shouldn't mention his name, who you guys know now,
Yeah.
whose cousin, I've said this on your show, whose cousin worked on the lunar lander, and he worked on the landing gear, and he was interfacing with the astronauts all the time. And when they got back, they briefed him on what happened. And according to this very reputable guy's cousin, I almost want to say the name, but I can't do it. They don't have permission. But he was told that they went to the moon and they made the most amazing discovery in the history of the human species on planet Earth. Two things. They found wreckage, ancient wreckage on the moon. And it was advanced technology, but it was in a state of ruination on the moon. That's the first thing. The second
Roswell
thing,
crash?
yeah, but it was like a spacecraft on the moon.
Real old, not a new crash.
Even older. Yeah, like an ancient wreckage.
Ancient.
And the second thing they found, and the second thing that happened was they were being observed the entire time by saucers. So they had all this footage, and if you're up there and you've got ancient wreckage,
Yeah.
what are you going to aim that camera at?
The wreckage.
You're not going to aim it at some guy jumping around on the moon, you know what I mean, riding a buggy. You're going to aim it at that wreckage. You're going to be hearing in your ear, document every detail. So when they come back with the footage, what do they got? Or the simultaneous broadcast, what do they got? They're not going to show the world ancient wreckage. So they had canned footage ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that was filmed in a studio, some of it. And the other component of this is they come back to the Earth, these guys, with the greatest story ever. And they're told, never a word about it. And this bothered Armstrong, especially for the rest of his life, that they could not disclose what they had discovered. They were told, and they didn't like it. They thought the world should know. They were very upset about it. So now go back to that picture of those three guys sitting there at that press conference. They're pissed off.
A secret they have to keep.
They're not allowed to say, they're not allowed to tell the world what they discovered on the moon. They have to pretend like that didn't happen. So you see, there are a lot more options than we didn't go. A lot more
Yeah, we
interesting.
could have got a lot of places.
Yeah, I
Get
mean,
one of those telescopes. Gonna get one of those on Black Friday. Yeah, when I can see the
Yeah.
stuff on the moon.
Well, you almost can at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
We'll go halvesies.
I've said this 100 times. You can get a telescope and see the moons of Jupiter.
Yeah.
So,
Keep it at Castle Alberino, and I'll come up there and use it every once in a while.
Yeah.
okay.
We'll do that. We'll do that in Costa Rica. How about?
All right. No.
No? All right. Fine.
Oh,
I will.
I love this. I mean, we got to cover Tim. We become great friends, and you know, like everyone who's been on this stage, we so appreciate your contributions to the Blurry Creatures. And I mean, beyond that, like our friendship, and we're doing things together, books and trips. But I know that a lot of folks out here feel the same way. Like there's something very unique about the way that you see the world and interpret the scripture, and also to answer some of these questions. And I always like to listen. I always like your point of view because I think, as Nate said, it's always pragmatic. It's like I want to make sense of this in a very practical way. At the same time, we're on the Death Star talking about the intergalactic war, so I think it's very appropriate.
Oh yeah.
And we chose this topic before I realized that
We didn't even
it was a Star Wars deal.
Could have been a pirate.
Yeah. But the cool thing about today though is like all the conversations sort of work together, and we didn't plan that either.
No, we did.
It's kind of funny how that happens. But I like these conversations because I've always felt like in the garden, it seemed like there was an older relationship there. Like they had known each other or known of each other for a long, it just didn't seem like that was the beginning. And I think
That's a good point, yeah.
and a lot of these people that write these books, and obviously the ancient aliens narrative is growing in popularity, and people don't really there's not many people who bring the Bible into that conversation.
Well, I always say the premise of Ancient Aliens is biblical.
Sure.
Mankind has been in contact with advanced extraterrestrials
But people
since the beginning.
They're saying all these things you're talking about, but they're just not including the Son of God in it.
Well, and I think also some of these terms have been hijacked, right? We've talked about the definition of extraterrestrial just means not of Earth. And so by definition, what we call angels would not be of Earth. They're not Earth-born. They are of the heavens, right? So sometimes it's just these hijacked semantics that people are very uncomfortable with, right? Like extraterrestrial, it doesn't mean some of the things that may conjure up, right? It actually just, by definition, defines an angel.
I'm sorry. I just looked at the screen. It says, going to go to Yoda when you banter. What the heck does that mean?
So
what have I been missing?
Hey, don't
all
give away
day
our
here?
cues.
So we were
Tim.
talking about prophecy. It's
Well, I'm
got
trying
two
to think about what you're
meanings.
saying. How am I supposed to concentrate? What are we bantering about?
Let's go to Yoda, huh?